We went in to adopt our baby boy, and we were in an orphanage where we actually stayed in the orphanage for the week of his adoption. We lived in the houses where the children were with their caregivers. And while we were there, we were in a house with 12 kids. They brought the baby into us. And Taylor was there at the time. He had just come into the orphanage about 2 or 3 weeks before we had arrived. And just an aside, our adoption trip was postponed by 3 weeks because our judge got sick. And while we were upset with the timing change, it was God's timing, because when we arrived, Taylor was there. He wouldn't have been there if we'd gone when we were supposed to. We'd never met him. So we arrived, we stay at the orphanage, and we interact with the kids. You know, you don't speak the language, you can't watch television, there's nothing that you can read, it's all in Russian. So what do? Well, it was summertime, and the kids were out of school, so we would go outside and play basketball and play soccer and do art with them and just, you know, try to communicate any way we could. And Taylor and another little guy that was his friend in our orphanage kind of went out of their way to spend time with us. And we would watch him out the window of the orphanage, and he'd be out playing on the little makeshift soccer field, which was a dirty area full of rocks, more than it was a soccer field. But we would watch him. And I remember one day there was a little girl out there, and she had a ball that she was playing with. And an older boy came up to her and took the ball away from her and just left. And Taylor was in the midst of a high-pressure soccer game, I'm sure. And he saw this situation, stopped where he was, and went to that boy and got the ball and gave it back to the little girl, and then went back to his playing of soccer. And the more time we spent with him, I said, this is so different than with our first daughter, Irina. There's something very different between the two of them. They're about the same age. They've had, you know, basically the same country, the same background. What is it that makes them different? And over time, I came to realize that Irina's purpose in our life and God's plan was to show me what this difference was. And by spending time with Taylor for that week, I realized there was a way to discern whether these children had some abilities to trust us, whether they had some abilities to interact and to act out of selfish needs, and basically they were just really genuinely interested, and therefore they didn't have the tendencies of the reactive attachment disorder. Well, we went home, and the night before we went home, Taylor and his friend came up to us, and they brought us these 2 little toys to give to our baby boy, you know, for like a souvenir, I guess. And I remember Taylor gave me this little Matchbox car, and there was a little fender broken off of it, and it was well used. And, you know, in our country, that would have been garbage long ago, but that was his prized toy, and he gave of himself to our son without expecting anything in return for himself. And over time, I've realized that that is one of the key identifying factors with RAD, is being able to give of yourself without expecting anything in return. And so we went home, and on the airplane home, I told my husband, I said, you know, he's our son. And he was like, I know, but how are we going to do it? Everybody will think we're crazy. We've already got one at home that's in the mental hospital half the time, and if she runs away from home, how do we explain this is different? I said, we don't explain it. God will explain it. So we got home, and we started sharing with family, and, you know, a few people raised their eyebrows, but we had full support. And eventually we went back, and, you know, we called Taylor on the phone and told him we'd like to adopt him, and I'll let him share his story from there. But he's here. He's been home, be going on 10 years. He's getting ready to have his 25th birthday this fall, right? And he is in his 3rd year at the university at Kennesaw University, which is part of the University of Georgia system. He graduated valedictorian of his high school class. He came over and played soccer and won all region, all state, went on and played varsity soccer. He played select soccer, was offered a scholarship to college playing soccer and turned that down for an academic scholarship. So, you know, I'm here to boast about him because I'm his mommy and he's my shining star. But through Taylor's actions, and it's very rare that a child adopted will openly continue to promote this. They come here, and it's kind of like what they call the drawbridge effect. They pull it up behind them, and they just want to let the past go and just forget it was ever a part of their life. And with Taylor, I've worked really hard to explain to him that his biological mother didn't do anything really wrong. I mean, she made choices that weren't right, made choices that you and I wouldn't agree with. But if I were to live in her shoes in that place during that time, I can't guarantee you that I would have made any different choices. I haven't walked in her shoes, but she decided to give him life. And by giving him life, it gave us an opportunity to be together and be family, for him to have a future and go to school and promote this program. So, she was one of the blessings of all of this, her and Irina both. It wasn't our plan how it happened, but it was God's plan. And so we're in that path, and we continue to pray for him to expand our horizons and to give us the tools and the opportunities to build this program up to solely glorify him. And that's what our goal is. And now we started the hosting program in 2002 when a few friends of Taylor's came over to visit with some friends in our church. Several of them were adopted out of 15, and it just continued to grow from there. And now we've brought over 1,200 kids. New Horizons for Children is its own nonprofit, a 501c3, which is a tax exempt, and monies given to us are tax deductible donations. But we're on our 15th program this summer. We brought almost 200 children at Christmas, and we're hoping to bring more than 200 for the coming summer. Some of their pictures you see there on the table. And those are children that, if you're not called to host, it takes prayer warriors for each and every one of these kids. And if you would be called to be a prayer warrior for one or two of these children, and through our website you can watch their status with their photos and see if they get hosted. But be a prayer warrior for these children, because they definitely need that. So I'm going to turn it over to Taylor and let him tell a little bit about his life. We're very open to answering questions. We're here among Christian brothers and sisters, and we're here to educate you and to also, answer any concerns you have or any kind of question at all. Please don't be afraid to ask.